So, hey, everybody. I'm Melissa Fassel Dunn. I'm the owner and the founder of the Milton Scene and the host of Milton Neighbors. I'll be moderating this very unusual candidate forum with a new and exciting format. Welcome. This forum will be hosted and streamed live on Milton Access TV and also in the Milton Neighbors Facebook group. And it's going to be recorded and shared on the Milton Scene and the Milton Neighbors later this week. Many thanks go out to Milton Access TV for their help tonight. I'm so grateful. Otherwise, I'd be running this ship myself. So before we begin, I would like to introduce our sponsors. After we hear from the sponsors, we're going to start streaming the forum on Milton Access TV. Now, our first sponsor is Milton's State Representative, Bill Driscoll. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you to the Milton Scene and for hosting this forum. And thanks to Milton Access Television for bringing it to a wide audience tonight and for doing the behind the scenes work. Chances are that if you live in Milton, I'm your state rep. I'm proud to sponsor this forum tonight and happy to see opportunities like this to advance democracy are occurring in our town. I wanted to promote one thing for this Friday, May 22nd. I'm going to be hosting virtual office hours, and you can visit BillDriscollJr.com for more details about the opportunity. Or if Friday doesn't work for you, feel free to reach out and we'll schedule a date and time that's more convenient for you. I'd be happy to meet over the phone or over the web video to talk about the issues facing our district and our Commonwealth. My thoughts are with those that have been negatively impacted by recent events. And if you need assistance with an unemployment claim or any other matter, feel free, please reach out to my office. I invite you to visit www.BillDriscollJr.com or to call 617-570-3344. We've got a list of resources you can access, or we'll try and help you get the assistance that you need. Best of luck to all the candidates tonight and in the upcoming election. Thank you and be well. Back to you, Melissa. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Bill. I hear you have to get the kids to bed now, so we'll let you go.
Yeah, I might have to catch this on the replay, but I'll be watching.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
So our next sponsor is Elliott Physical Therapy. And I know I see tons of Milton Neighbors over there when I go to have them help me fix my back. They're located at 475 Adams Street in Milton, and they are continuing to provide physical therapy services for new and existing patients throughout the coronavirus crisis. So if you're suffering from an injury while you quarantine at home, maybe you have a terribly ergonomic situation and you need some help, please reach out to Elliott PT for a telehealth consultation or an in-clinic visit. Telehealth physical therapy can be done over the phone, tablet, or your computer. Thank goodness for modern technology. It's completely HIPAA compliant, and recent data is demonstrating results equal to in-clinic visits. Do not suffer at home or put off a nagging injury. You might get worse. Visit Elliott Physical Therapy's website at elliottphysicaltherapy.com. That's ELLIOTT, 2 L's, 2 T's, and then call them at 617-696-8141 to schedule an appointment. And I also understand that they have an ability for you to chat with them right online too, if you'd like to do that. So thank you very much to Elliott PT. And now I think we're just about ready to get started. Mike, do we have the go-ahead?
You're all set, good to go.
Great, awesome. So many thanks to those who have just joined us and welcome. Tonight we are hearing from the candidates for the Milton Select Board, as this is a town contested race. Each candidate is running for a 3-year term on the board. With us this evening are incumbent Richard Wells and newcomers Daniel Clark and Arthur Doyle. Welcome, everybody. Each candidate will be given in the beginning up to 5 minutes to speak an introduction. This will take place in reverse alphabetical order. So Richard Wells is going to go first, followed by Arthur Doyle, and we'll finish with Daniel Clark. And after that introduction, each candidate will be asked a series of 7 questions related to issues in town. These questions have been solicited by Milton residents from the Milton Scene prior to the forum. And each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the questions, and we'll rotate the order of responses for fairness purposes. The candidate will be giving a 15-second warning with this really fancy sign. At the end of the 90 seconds, the candidate will be able to finish their thought, but may be muted if that goes on for too long. We've got this neat technology. We can actually mute people now. After the question and answer period, we'll close with a final 2-minute closing from each candidate. And I think we're ready to begin. I realize that 5 minutes might be a little bit too long. So to the candidates, please don't feel too much pressure to take up the full 5 minutes. And Richard Wells, you are going to be starting us off, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Wow. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Rep. Driscoll. Thank you to the whole Elliott family for hosting this tonight. Probably none of us, any candidate here tonight or any candidate who's ever run for town election, ever thought that they'd be coming speaking to the residents of this community via Zoom. As we all know, given the situation that we're currently in, Zoom has become part of our life. I don't really want to talk about myself, but in a 30-second nutshell, it was just almost 36 years ago that I first came to work for the town of Milton, for the police department. I was fortunate that 4 people gave me an opportunity: John Cronin, Walter Timothy Sr., Bill Riley, Jim Mullen, and Chief Gerard Mattaliano. And I could probably write a book or go on for an hour just about that career, but as you know, Melissa, 3 years ago, I entered the second phase of my career. Something that I often say in our board meetings was never on my bucket list was to run and achieve a seat on the select board in Milton. But the one commonality amongst all of us is that we all have 02186 zip code. Milton is our home. And for Milton, this community is about, parents, students, businesses, residents, seniors, juniors, kids. That's what the community is about. It's also about our employees, the people who make this community work for us. The police officers, the firefighters, the teachers, the Board of Health staff, which is doing yeoman's work right now, the COA, every aspect of this community, every employee who works here, parks, everyone who make Milton the special place that it is. They're the ones who really motivate you to do this. When you come on the select board, I tease people, like, the first thing you want to do is roll up your sleeves, because this is a busy, busy job. It's way busier than 10 years as chief. People will come to you. It's far more diverse and multifaceted. My first year on the job, there was just so much to learn, even though I had just come off 10 years being chief. But the one thing that I appreciate the most is that the colleagues that I work with. On the select board, it started with 3 of us, David, Katie, and myself, and now it's expanded to 5 with the addition of Tony Farrington, Linda Collins, and Mike Zulis, who is currently our chair. We also have a very strong town administrator who is a great team, and everyone in town hall, from the town accountant to our select board staff, everyone, treasurer's office, these people do an unbelievable job to make Milton what it is. And so the role of being on the select board is really you're a facilitator. It requires that you be patient, that you're a listener, that you're willing to work hard, that you're willing to give effort, that you're willing to represent the people of Milton. Right now, more than ever, we need leadership. We are truly facing something that none of us could have ever imagined, ever in our wildest dreams. And because of that, and a lot of all the other reasons I've cited, I wanted to run for re-election because there are things that we need to continue to work on. East Milton, there's going to be the challenge of building a new school. Our fire station is a critical issue for this town going forward. Traffic, so many, although the traffic today is a lot better. If it could stay like this, it'd be really good. The only traffic that's really plaguing us right now is the line that goes out of the Fruit Center every day out to Bassett Street, but we know that things will change and we'll go back. And these issues that press the Board of Selectmen, affordable housing, things of that nature will come back. And so that's the reason I'm running. This is truly an honor and a privilege to have this position, and I'd like to continue in it for the next 3 years. Thank you very much.
Oh wait, now I'm up. Okay, I'm back.
You muted yourself.
I know.
All right, okay. I'm thinking, I didn't do this. Okay,
I
I'll
had
mute
the battle
myself.
of the mute.
Sorry.
All right. So thank you so much, Richard. Next, we're going to hear from Arthur Doyle. Arthur, you have up to 5 minutes.
Appreciated, Melissa. And also thanks to Representative Driscoll, to Elliott Physical Therapy, to Milton Access TV. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for attending this forum. I know how busy everyone is during this extreme time, and I join you in being optimistic about the future, knowing also it will require hard work and flexibility for some time to come. In beginning, it is only appropriate to acknowledge the sacrifices made by so many in responding in one form or another to the pandemic. All those treating the medically affected and comforting their families. Those providing support, as has been done by our schools, the food pantry, to name but a few, and those keeping our community safe. Now, as a candidate, my background and experience fit well with the duties and responsibilities of the Milton Select Board, having proven senior level management policy formation, business planning, and leadership experience. They are highly timely essentials for responding to the increasingly demanding landscape we face today and we will face tomorrow. This landscape includes a number of important topics impacting our community to be addressed collaboratively for resolution, only a few of which are managing a sustainable future during a challenging time, strengthening our infrastructure, broadly defined, addressing competing priorities, retaining affordability, maintaining a quality community, planning strategically, and delivering on a timely basis are core to our community in areas such as executing the master plan's goals, affordable housing, zoning updating, economic development and revenue generation, environmental issues such as airplane noise and pollution, and water issues with 11 inches more annual rainfall over the past 20 years and a potentially cascading impact from the Blue Hills, as well as changes in the Neponset Valley watershed, all of which will require community engagement, collaboration, and sound decision-making. When asked during the campaign about the origins of my interest in the Select Board, I recounted my first direct experience with the then selectman while a financial aid administrator at Boston College. Reviewing the department's work study program records prior to submission for the annual fiscal operating report to the federal government, I noticed that Milton was not among the municipalities where eligible students were employed on a part-time basis, something I had passed along to the town's executive secretary, John Cronin. That led to a presentation of the program and its benefits to the Board of Selectmen, and following a subsequent meeting, contractual relationships with several colleges and universities where Milton students were enrolled. Later, while director of undergraduate admissions at BC, where I also oversaw the financing of higher education for incoming students, we expanded the contract to enable entering freshmen to participate as well as upper class students. My first official engagement in town government had begun with election from Precinct 6 to the town meeting. I served there for over a decade, along with several years on the Conservation Commission and with other committee work. Interrupted by assignments in my organization's policy office in our nation's capital, leadership of its Midwestern division, and management responsibilities with its global office in Manhattan, I was then appointed New England Regional Vice President. My wife Susan and our 3 children sought out a community that was the best fit for us. The choice was Milton. Some of you may know Susan from her subsequent years of service at both Cunningham and Glover schools. Interrupted by assignments enabled me while living in the Village of Ridgewood, New Jersey, to continue my engagement in community and civic service by serving 2 terms as an elected member of the Board of Education for the Village of Ridgewood. There were distinctions, while this is compatible to a school committee, in that budget formation was a bit different and had to be voted on in a special election outside of the municipal election. A compelling experience. Upon return to Milton, I again began involved in the town, elected a town meeting member from Precinct 7 this time, reappointed to the Conservation Commission, appointed as co-chair of the Long Range Planning Committee of the Milton Public Schools, to which I brought my graduate management experience at Northwestern University and professional experience in strategic planning at the College Board. That diligent Long Range Planning Committee's 2-year effort produced a number of unifying recommendations for enhancing both our schools and, in that respect, academic services, fiscal planning in our community through the start of our townwide consolidated facilities management program. Subsequent appointments included election warden for Precinct 3 and for Precinct 4, and membership on the Business and Citizens Advisory Committee to the East Milton Square Parking and Access Study. Interested in the then Board of Selectmen, a 50% business travel requirement would not have been fair to the community. That changed following retirement, and even though retained on a part-time basis by the College Board's higher education practice, that travel requirement ended. This past year, the Warrant Committee advised us in its report on the FY20 budget about the ongoing needs to maintain government-provided services at the level to which our residents have become accustomed. Since then, and now on the cusp of an important election, we're faced with a very uncertain situation this past April, over April 2019 alone. We know state constraints will cause us to fall back more on our resources and leadership. We await the report of the Warrant Committee for the upcoming annual town meeting. At its recent meeting, the Warrant Committee produced a balanced budget for FY21 with a transfer of $1 million for Milton's $4.8 million stabilization fund. At this time, I return to the moderator and look forward to both answering questions and providing closing comments.
Thank you so much, Arthur. Okay, next we're going to hear from Daniel Clark. Dan, you have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to start off by thanking Melissa and all the folks. I'm sure it wasn't a singular effort at the Milton scene to put this on today, but I'm sure it's going to be a great forum. Mike Lynch and his staff at Milton Access TV for all your help to bring this to the public tonight. We really appreciate it. And of course, Representative Bill Driscoll for helping to sponsor it, but also I think it's great that he's doing those office hours. It's something that I think is critical at a time like now in everything that we're facing. I also want to congratulate those Milton graduates in the class of 2020 who were forced to sacrifice so much when you were on the footsteps of your celebration. Your hard work and dedication have not gone unnoticed, and we're proud of your accomplishments. So as Melissa said, my name is Dan Clark. I'm running for Select Board because we face numerous challenges that have only been exacerbated by the pandemic. But I see even greater potential and opportunity. Our current Select Board works incredibly hard to represent the interests of the town as a collective, and I want to contribute and serve a role I would consider as a value add. Being a town meeting member and vice chair of the Fire Station Building Committee has provided me with a clear perspective of the significant town-wide challenges that will require thoughtful planning and genuine leadership to solve appropriately. I've really enjoyed working with the town administrator, town accountant, town treasurer as we've navigated the Fire Station Building Committee and developed really good relationships throughout town. And that was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to start to give back beyond just the Fire Station Building Committee. I bring substantial experience and judgment from my role as a parent, career in design and construction, and partner in my engineering firm. I'm someone who believes in working proactively instead of reactively. I believe we've all witnessed what a remarkable community we have during this pandemic. We've all watched firsthand the selfless acts of generosity, volunteerism, and civic duty of our friends and neighbors. which is what makes Milton great. It's the type of community effort that's going to be required to help solve our challenges, from budget shortfalls to infrastructure projects to zoning and development questions going forward. As a community, we need to find unique solutions to work for the town as a whole. It's going to require hard conversations, but if the answers were easy, they would have already been implemented. The pandemic has disrupted all of our lives and forced us to work, live, and think in terms that we probably didn't think were possible 2 months ago. I certainly never expected to get a haircut from my wife in the bathroom of our house, but it's what we do. We find ways of improvising. We push forward. We need to start focusing on how we can turn this into an opportunity and reset how we operate as a community. Thankfully, Milton's going to receive $2.4 million in state aid associated with the CARES Act with associated pandemic costs, but a lot of that hard work comes from the staff and dedication at Town Hall, especially the accounting department and our town administrator, who have already started to put us into a better position. But $2.4 million is only 2% of our operating budget, and many people are predicting shortfalls of 10, 20% in revenues for private and public sectors and municipalities. Which is why, early in my career, I was taught the importance of maintaining a diverse portfolio of clients and work to sustain our business during hard economic times. And I remember when I first started in the industry, it was coming out of the 2007 financial crisis, and those lessons are what guided us by my mentors and proved invaluable. And in Milton, we lack this diversified approach when 2/3 of the operating budget come from the tax levy, and 94% of that is residential. I know talking to people around town before the pandemic, we were asking, how can we find new revenue streams to minimize the burden on operating budget and the residents, but also pay for significant capital projects looming on the horizon. I believe that my experience and background can help find these new revenue streams through thoughtful, smart growth development that encourages mixed-use developments, diverse housing within existing neighborhoods, through community engagement, however. I think that's the critical thing that we have to remember. But we also have to remember these revenue sources, when we find new ones, are not endless, and we have to be vigilant about balancing our budget going forward. So we really have to ask ourselves, what do we want the town of Milton to look like in a post-pandemic world? We need to begin having those conversations and making those decisions today. Now is the time for the next generation of leaders to rise to this occasion and guide our communities forward, because our future really depends on it. Back to you, Melissa.
Thanks so much, Dan. Okay, so thank you very much for everybody for everybody for introducing themselves. I think it's really nice for people to get to meet the candidates. So now we're going to move on to the question period. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer the question, and we're going to rotate the order of responses to questions. So for question 1, the question will go first to Richard, followed by Arthur, and then Dan. Here it is. Question 1. The COVID-19 emergency has had and is expected to have a substantial negative financial impact on the town's budget, such that cuts may need to be made and belts tightened. Conversely, the town faces substantial costs associated with protecting its residents and employees, and major capital projects are proposed, including new fire stations and a new school. Keeping this in mind, Milton neighbors have a 2-part question for you. Part 1, what are your proposals for addressing budget deficits and growing municipal revenue, particularly in light of COVID-19? And part 2, would you be in favor of abolishing the ban on all cannabis-related business to at least allow people who own large properties that have been traditionally zoned as farmland to cultivate marijuana? So this question goes to Richard first.
Hear me okay? Can you hear me? No, you just muted me. Host has spotlighted your video.
We can hear you.
You can hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. It came up, you've been muted. I'm like, Hillary's not here tonight. Who muted me? No, that's inside SB joke. So is that a 2 questions you asking me? 90 seconds per question?
Yes, it is. Hurry up.
All right.
I'm going to start the timer right now.
All right, good. Yeah, you didn't bring an alarm clock. You brought a 15-second thing, but not an alarm clock. So thank you. So listen, COVID-19, when I first spoke, I said we have a great staff. And having been deputy chief for 15 years of administration, the chief for almost 10 years, budgets and hills and valleys, the 2008 recession, we've been through these exercises before. It is true that COVID-19 is unlike anything we've ever faced, but a couple of things, one Mr. Clark mentioned, and another is our stabilization fund that Mr. Doyle made, is number one, early on in this, the town administrator and all the department heads, the select board finance subcommittee, the schools, everyone came together to tighten their belts, make the savings they could in the third quarter of this year, which is, our schools have been closed. A lot of town services have been minimized, and they were very good. And I was very impressed, as I should be, in how they were able to iron out and level fund the budget for the remaining of the year. It's true in FY21, we're looking at probably a 20% cut across the board, but because of the stabilization fund, because of the CARES Act, as was mentioned, we have the ability to apply for up to $2.4 million to try and recoup some of those losses going into 21. Those are critical things to this. I do think there are many ways with regard to the cannabis. My whole life has been public safety, and my whole life has been wanting to protect people. And working hard to protect people. Let's not lose sight of the fact that we're still in the midst of an opioid crisis. One of the things that I spoke about at the end of my time as chief, and also when I ran for this board, was when we legalized marijuana, we opened up another playing field for substance that do we really need in America. The one thing I would change in that now that it has been legalized and it's here is, even though as a board, we haven't really discussed it wholeheartedly, we've listened to some proposals from companies who've tried to come in here and we've decided no, is that now this is operational, the money is going to come in. So the communities who do host will gain their revenue. Do I think that that's a way to get us out of the COVID-19 crisis? No, I think that the path that the town administrator set, I think that the way that the subcommittees have planned this going forward and the vision that currently exists amongst our leadership will help us to work through it. So have faith in your leadership, have faith in the people who work hard for you. They're very open and transparent. We meet once a week now. We talk about this constantly. And I said, I got to give credit to those who really work hard to get us through this. We will get through this COVID.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We have Arthur. Arthur, you are next. Do you want me to repeat the question?
I have it, Melissa. Thank you. This, of course, is going to be not just a stringent time economically for our community, but also for families, for our national government, for businesses and industries, for small business owners. And somehow we are going to be able to pull together by using the resources that we have, the most important and valuable of which are our town employees and volunteer leaders. And I think that working together, being creative and resilient, we will find the path to a secure future in Milton. There is no easy fix. We can't reach out and say tomorrow, by using a magic wand, we're going to have new mixed-use businesses that are going to generate a tremendous amount of new and additional revenue for the town. That's going to take time. Thank goodness we do have a great contingency fund, or reserve fund, as it's called oftentimes in other organizations. It's there for emergencies like this. And we want to be, of course, very mindful of the fact that one of our first fiduciary responsibilities, after making sure that our personnel are safe in their jobs and that our infrastructure and our resources are supporting our communities, is to restore those monies, because we do not know what the next emergency might be. With respect to the cannabis question, I would urge caution. This is not a time in the presence of CV-19 to grasp for straws. No easy solution is going to be the way to go. It's going to take a methodological approach, engaging a lot of people, sometimes to study, but not study that goes on forever, but rather an approach that works toward delivering solutions to sustain our quality of life and to make our people as proud of Milton as they have always been. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dan. Dan, you are up. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, it's all right. Thank you.
Okay.
So I think the first thing is a top-down approach in trying to evaluate where can we save money. There's two competing priorities here. Maintaining the services, but finding ways to cut costs. And I think that's going to be the most important thing to do first is, go through the top-down approach of trying to find places to save money. And then also we do need to try to find new revenue streams. And Mr. Doyle is absolutely right. It's not something that's going to come tomorrow. While there are a lot of projects that are already out there being discussed, especially the 40Bs and that are out there, no one really knows what's going to happen with that. It's something that, we're discussing daily in my industry. And, are those projects even going to still be on the drawing board when we start to come out of this? So, while I don't think anybody in town really loves exactly how those 4 projects are currently going, those are potential opportunities that could generate revenue. That may not be there. So we need to be thinking strategically and how we can both set ourselves up in the short term and long term. We need to be constantly balancing that. I feel like sometimes we're not, we're focused a little too much in the short term and a little bit too in the micro. We need to really think macro and long term as we start to develop these plans. And as far as the cannabis question, I think there's a lot of due diligence that needs to be done that hasn't been done. There's certain places that the state has stipulated that these types of buildings could go or facilities could go. And I think we would need to better understand as a community where that is. But additionally, while we don't have the facilities in town, we're still impacted by it. I'd be curious to hear more from our current chief on what the impacts have been from neighboring communities who do have facilities, who do have the ability to sell in the community. Because those other communities are reaping the benefits of selling in Milton or delivering to Milton, and we're not getting that revenue stream. So I don't know if any of us can, or I personally couldn't answer the question definitively one way or the other, but I think there's a lot of questions to be asked, and it's a good point to be investigated further and requires a lot more due diligence, but nothing should be off the table at this point.
Thank you so much, Dan. All right. So question 2. Milton Academy, Curry College, and BID Milton Hospital own some of the most valuable properties in town and utilize town resources. Yet, as nonprofits, these landowners do not pay taxes, and the town's payment in lieu of taxes initiative, otherwise known as pilot, has not seen substantial changes in payments from these institutions. Meanwhile, Boston has had great success in securing payments of 25% of the assessed value from many of its nonprofits. In light of this, a Milton neighbor asks, why has the town's pilot initiative not succeeded, and what would you do to secure greater pilot payments from these substantial landowners? And this question goes first to Arthur, followed by Dan, and then Richard. So Arthur, go ahead.
Can you hear me now? I can't hear you.
Please restart. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, that's all right. We're all getting used to this. Having spent a good portion of my life in nonprofit higher education, I'm quite familiar with the pilot program and the contributions that institutions make to the communities in which they reside. I cannot recount the reasons why Milton may not have the level of contribution through the pilot approach that might be desirable for it. But I think it is a proven approach that benefits both institutions. And there are ways in which to work collaboratively with them, individually, collectively, through our municipal resources or by engaging external resources with expertise in the development of pilot programming. So I would look forward after we get through the CV-19 period, because we know everybody has been adversely impacted. The McKinsey Consultancy in higher education shows that Massachusetts higher education institutions suffered a loss of $4 billion, including reductions in endowments. So this would be a good time to take a breather, do the planning, and begin the approach for working out collaborative pilot programs with the three institutions that you cited.
Thank you so much, Arthur. Okay, Dan, you're next.
Yeah, so it is unfortunate the pilot program hasn't generated the revenue that I think many thought it would when it first came about. But, these things don't happen overnight. I think they take time. But we also have to remember that, while we are providing services, it's not completely in a vacuum. These are good. All three of these nonprofits are good institutions that you want in your community. You want to be partners with them. And that's the type of relationship we need to continue to build. I think every one of us is probably extremely grateful to have BID Milton in our community and have it as a resource. Curry College is a great asset. And of course, Milton Academy is great to have in town. All three are looking at really significant challenges similar to the town. Endowments are going to go down. There's going to be a lot of colleges and universities that don't survive something like this. So I do agree with Mr. Doyle that we probably should hit the pause on this a little bit, but we also need to be thinking outside the box and try to find some other ways that we could potentially approach it. Maybe the pilot program isn't a one-size-fits-all, and we should try to figure out if there are other avenues that we can use to either get them to buy into it or to maybe lead them to the pilot program. We need to explore all of our options, and we do have an opportunity to do that now.
Thank you so much, Dan. Okay, Richard, you're next.
Thank you, Melissa. So, suppose being on the board, it kind of gives me a little bit of the insight, and I want to begin by giving credit to the current pilot chair and two previous pilot chair, subcommittee chairs, Mike Zubas, Dave Bruce out of this. I agree with Mr. Clark. I would not want to see this community without any one of the three entities. I think especially we have to look at the role BI Deaconess is playing right now in Milton during the COVID-19 crisis, and it's pretty remarkable. Curry's been a great partner for as long as I can remember, but some of the things that have changed just since I've come on the board. Curry has increased their annual contribution to $100,000 a year, which we began 2 years. This will be their third year. And I know that as they're facing, all their students had to leave too, and they've been shut down for 4 months and 3 months. That makes it difficult. Milton Academy has transferred some roles. The discussions are ongoing. They moved some houses and they moved money over off the tax roll and made a pilot payment in excess of $100,000 this year. Both of those entities, each has made other contributions to important causes in town, from substance abuse to affordable, things like that. And BI Deaconess is still a work in process. The thing I would say to both of the other candidates is, one thing you learn when you get here is you need patience and you need to listen. So this is a dialogue that is ongoing all the time. And I think that we will continue on the same path. We have a good policy in place, and I think we'll do okay.
Thank you so much. All right, question 3. As previously mentioned, the town is facing severe budget issues, and Milton Public Schools class size are on the rise, so much so that planning for our new school has begun with the impact of social distancing on class sizes being unknown. At the same time, there are, of course, the 4 40B housing developments currently proposed. In light of this, one Milton neighbor asks, what is your opinion on the numerous 40B proposals which could greatly exacerbate the current enrollment crisis in the schools, putting more of a strain on teachers and the town's limited resources at the exact time we are trying to fix it? And this question will go first to Dan, followed by Richard, and then Arthur.
Thank you, Melissa. So I think the first thing we have to remember is, what are these developments, 40B proposals specifically targeting? And, they're mostly 1 and 2 bedrooms. There are some mandated 3 bedrooms in those types of developments, but for the most part, they are 1 and 2 bedrooms. So a lot of those units don't actually encourage school-age kids to be part of it. Certainly it is a portion of it, but, if out of the 4 40B projects, 100 units came on, we shouldn't be anticipating 100 of the units are going to be with school-age children. So it's actually the type of growth that I think that we want to encourage in the right capacity and the right size. Smaller, affordable units that single people can live in, or smaller families can live in, because it's a little bit less of a burden on the school systems and the police and the fire and stuff like that. So it's the type of development that we should actually encourage as opposed to large single family houses that we traditionally, I think, have seen in Milton, which, I'm a great example of that. I moved to this town and, bought a house from an empty nester and brought 2 children into the school district that had 0 for the last 20 years. So I think that's where we're probably going to see a bigger influx in students. And as far as the school part goes, we have to be creative with what we're going to go forward with. Our school building committee is doing incredible work. I know that they're turning over every rock and every leaf looking for solutions. And I think that they need to be given the right tools to keep going forward with that. And I think their statement of interest was a good first step in that direction.
Thank you so much, Dan. Arthur, you're next.
With respect to the 40B population increase, there's no question that it's going to be an increase. We just don't know yet how much on the margin. I agree entirely with Dan that the larger issue is one of demographics, and that is the aging population that will be turning over their housing stock, which will be filled, as was the case with my family, coming into Milton with 4 children and going into the Milton schools. There's no question but that there is now an existing strain on our educational resources. It has been accumulating over a number of years, and it will continue to grow. We just don't know the pace. So it's very wise for the planning that has been put into place to be occurring now rather than down the road, being faced with extraordinary circumstances, portables being brought in, unusual demands for the humans who have responsibility for educating our community's children. That said, we must also take a look at another factor, and I think it's going to be a product of CV19. Milton and several other communities are going to be very, very attractive, much more so because of this experience. The hospital is recognized for the courage that it has provided. I've had people come to my door and ask if they could leave their names and addresses so that if our house turns over, we could contact them, because they now want to move to Milton because it is a much easier commute from where they might be further down on the South Shore to Boston. So there's a whole dynamic that's in place. We want to be very, very conscious of it and be working in a very thorough, humanistic, and business-like manner to providing the very high quality of education that these young men and women deserve, because they are our future.
Thank you so much, Arthur. All right, so the next question is also a 2-parter. And when I asked the first one, we went over a little bit. So I'm going to extend this next one to 2.5 minutes because I think we're going to do it anyway. So here we go. The next 2 questions, and this one is 2-part, have to do with the
I don't think Richard got a chance to answer that last one.
I'm sorry. Oh, Dan, did I not do that? Dan, did I skip you?
No, Richard.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm the worst moderator ever.
You're fired.
Richard.
You're fired. I'm sitting here. I'm hitting #6 to unmute myself, and like nothing's happening. I'm like, should I text her?
I'm sorry. I'll do better. I got a checklist here with your names. I just didn't check off. I didn't use my own list. Go ahead.
I forgot the question. No, I'm only kidding.
I'm going to read it right now.
No. I have it. So first off, one of the things that the select board that you're prohibited from asking or commenting on in an affordable housing project is the relationship between students from the project and schools. It's exclusively prohibited. It's not one of the things we're allowed to comment on. The school issue is clearly something that is facing this town, and right now there's a great subcommittee working, school building committee, and they've got a multi-year projection to move this forward, and I think that will happen when the time comes. With regard to the affordables that are currently before us, the Ice House has just got site plan approval for just over 50 units. I think we've got 52 units. I think that the builders there are making concessions to bring some amenities to that project as well, which is sorely needed over on the west side of town, something commercially based. There's so many people in that neighborhood and so many people in this town fought for when the initial proposal was passed 3 years ago. With regard to the other proposals, I'm very impressed with the people in East Milton. They've taken a very active role. I actually sit on the subcommittee dealing with the Falcone project. And if you don't know, the Falcones and Cochrans have just asked to go sit back and take a few months to relook at this based on all the comments that so many people put in. And, affordable housing is a very important issue, but you have to do it tastefully and properly to do it forward. You only get one chance on each project. Some of these projects that have been proposed to us are way out of scope, way too big, and it's a lot of work to keep working on that. And I'm very proud of the people who are doing such a good job on this, and all the committees, planning board, ZBA, and every resident who has weighed in each of these projects in the past 2 months in light of everything else that they're going through. So we will get this done, and we will do this to make sure Milton stays the way it is, a very great community living.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll be doing better with my not leaving people out thing.
Are you unmuting us? Are you doing it yourself?
It's me and Mike is helping.
Okay, that's fine. So I don't have to do it. All right, thanks.
Yeah, I'm trying to manage.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. The next two questions have to do with the following 40B development proposals. The residences at East Milton Square, jointly proposed by the Falcone Companies and Corcoran Company. 582 Blue Hill Ave and 648 Canton Ave, proposed by an affiliate of Tamposi Brothers Development. And the Ice House, proposed by David A. Bosworth Company. So this question has two parts. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to extend the time on this to 2.5 minutes because it's complex. So part one is, do you support any of these 40B projects in their current form? And if so, why or why not? Part two, given that some of the 40B developers are owned by long-term Milton families and that the 3 select board candidates are either long-term Milton residents, such as Richard and Arthur, or building professionals, such as Dan, do any of you have any personal or professional relationships with any of these developers or their owners? And if so, please elaborate and explain what impact you feel that may have on your decision-making and whether you would recuse yourself from voting on these matters. And the order of these questions, and I'm going to pay really good attention to this. The first one goes to Richard, followed by Arthur, and then Dan.
So you want me to go through I'm muted.
No, you're not.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I'm just reading the screen as it comes up. It says you're muted. So with regard to each of the projects, I'll go through them quickly. As I just stated in the last question, Ice House has got site plan approval. This now goes to the ZBA, and that's where the neighbors will have another chance to weigh in on this. And I do find that even though I only met with Mr. Driscoll, who I didn't know, I do know the Bosworth family. I only met with them once when I was chair. I think they care about what they build there. I think they have an interest in what they build. And I think that that they've listened to the neighbors and they're moving towards something that will be, as I said, a benefit to everyone in this community, especially the neighbors that live in that neighborhood. With regard to the Tamposi projects, I'm 150% against both. These are like what I refer to, and unlike Dan, I'm not in this business. But if you go to look at either the Cantnaff site, the abutting neighbors, or the Blue Hill Avenue site, this is like a drone strike coming in and taking out two beautiful pieces of property that exist in our community. There will be not a scintilla of evidence of anything of what they currently look like. A lot of times people hear me talk about a project that is ongoing in the town of Dedham right now, near Ursuline Academy, in a neighborhood very much like the Columbines. It took a large residence like that, and they converted it into 9 beautiful condos. I went back, it's almost finished. I went back to look at it again yesterday. You wouldn't even know it changed. It went from a single to 9. What is proposed for these 2 sites is beyond, and I'm against both of them. And Mr. Tamposi really needs to go back to the drawing board or abandon his thoughts completely. With regard to the Falcone project, clearly I understand 2 aspects of this. I do know Bob. I met Bob through the Novara project when I was chief, and my interest in him came because I saw how devoted he was to it. They are a Milton family, and they do care about what is built here. As you know, Melissa, we've gone round and round. We've had subcommittees, open meetings. I currently sit on the East Milton subcommittee for the current project. I do believe it's too big as proposed. I'm concerned about the immediate abutters on Bassett, on Franklin Street, the water issues, the issues that have come up, traffic. These are all things that we need to address going forward for that project. As I said, you only get a chance to do this once. And being on this board the past 3 years, I want to continue in this measure because these are things that can alter your life, all the life of the residents here forever. Either do it right or don't do it at all. I'm a strong proponent of that. I think that the Falcones understand that. I know the Cochrans have taken it off, but I am thankful that they've listened to the residents and taken this project off the board to go back and rethink it. I'm also, in my final statement, I'm very happy with the action that our board took to ask Mass Housing to give us a 6-month delay to continue to meet and communicate to try and bring a project to East Milton that's good for the neighbors, the residents, and everyone who visits there, and potentially people who live in East Milton or anywhere in Milton who may want to live there at some time. So thank you. That's a 2-hour answer in about 91 seconds.
That was not 91 seconds. I timed it. That's why our next person, Arthur, gets a little over 3 minutes to answer that question. Thanks, Richard.
Richard yielded his time, did he? Well, the major premise for me is that any development needs to be congruent with the neighborhood. And I had an opportunity as a member of the Conservation Commission, from which I took a leave of absence during the campaign, to have presentations, to understand those sites. And actually, the Conservation Commission did site walks at 3 of them. As Richard said, the ice house is pretty well along, and I think from what I understand, the town has a very reasonable development in progress with positive potential for that site. The other 2 sites, the Tamposi sites, are bewildering. And they raise, for me, a bigger question. From this experience, what is it we do to avoid this type of situation happening to our town in the future, so that it is Milton that manages its affordable housing situation, not a 40B process that is imposed upon Milton? That keeps one awake at night. And I think there are ways in which to address this and resolve it. We could worry about whether or not there's somebody else in the woodworks looking at another site for a 40B. And we have to be prepared for that and look at constructive alternatives. With respect to East Milton, It would be nice if there could be a meeting of the minds. Numbers of people, including myself and Richard, have tried to make that possible. It may now be something that could be worked out, maybe with a 40R instead of a 40B resolution. With respect to the second question, I do know Bob Falcone. I met Bob when I taught him in my first year of graduate school at St. Sebastian's School. He was one of my students and a very good student and an excellent hockey player. I had the opportunity to coach that team once when the hockey coach was away for a period of time. I hadn't seen him until I was going to the barbershop one day when the Navarro construction was in progress, and we recognized one another and struck up a conversation. Knowing Bob, whether it's legally necessary to recuse oneself or not, there is a perception, and perception can be reality. And I think if that were a conflict, I could recuse myself. And I don't think the Falcone company family would have any difficulty with that. But I would want to be on legally sound ground, and I would want to be professional and ethical in the eyes of the community.
Thank you. Okay. Dan, I'm not forgetting you.
No, that's all right.
See how good I am? I've got 3 people now. Okay, Dan, you are next. And we did go a little over 3 minutes, so feel free to take that time.
Yeah, so quickly then, as the 2 projects on Blue Hill and Canton Ave for the Tamposies, they're a great example of the type of developer that we don't want to be encouraging, but that we are finding ourselves coming into town with. They have a very limited background in doing this type of development. They're single family, larger development experience, mostly out of state. And so you get nervous when you find somebody that's trying to do something they haven't done before. It should make all of us nervous. And I think it's very evident that they don't know what they're doing with the plans that were presented. Furthermore, it makes me nervous that they have intentions to try to manage the properties when that's something that they don't do either. So, as Richard said, 150%, don't know what percentages, but I'm sure we're all in agreement that what was presented was grossly negligent in my mind, and really unfortunate that it came through. But there's only one way that we're ever going to not lie awake at night thinking about when's the next 40B development coming, and that's to have a plan that actually gets us to 10%. There's been great strides in this. The affordable production plan is something that's been worked on. It's a good first draft in my opinion. I think it does lack some areas where it's a little overreaching, thinking that we're going to be able to obtain some metrics to get towards it. And there's some sites that have been looked at and areas of town that have been looked at as potential areas to have affordable housing. But it's a good first start, but it needs a lot more work in my opinion. And I think that it's going to be a living document until we get to that 10%. It's going to require really hard conversations from the community as a whole and an education campaign, because I still think there's a perception of what affordable housing really is and what the projects can be. I think we've had a lot of really bad examples come through, and that's people's perception now. And so we need to really educate people on what it can be, and as a community come together and try to find places in town and developments that would work like that. As for the conflict of interest question, I'm fortunate actually that, I haven't lived here long enough to go back and have taught Bob Falcone. But I've met with Bob once as part of the fire station building committee. We were curious if any sites that he had or land that he had could work to help solve some problems with finding an East Milton firehouse location. Didn't come to fruition, but did enjoy working with Bob, very respectable man. And then as the second part, working wise, I'm fortunate that a lot of my work is actually out of state. The vast majority of my clients are and work I do are in Michigan and Connecticut these days. So I do have that ability where I'm not working where I have to live, but I am in the industry and I have that experience and quality.
Thank you so much. Okay. So question 5 also has 2 parts, and I'm also going to give some leeway on the time with this one. I think 3 minutes makes sense. Hopefully no one has to put kids to bed. So many of and we've actually already touched on some of these things, so I think it's good to nail them down with this question. Many of the current 40B proposals have faced substantial opposition from the neighbors and neighborhood associations based upon a variety of concerns, including oversized scale, traffic and parking, the impact on schools, and a lack of fit with the abutting neighborhoods. Based on many of the same concerns, the town has pulled out all the stops in opposing the proposed project on Randolph Ave. So part 1 is, if you are elected, can neighbors expect the same level of support from you if an accord on any of these projects can't be struck, which satisfies the town and the affected neighborhoods? And part 2 is, it's a trick question. Although substantial opposition exists to many of the current 40B proposals, it's no secret that Milton has a substantial shortage of affordable housing. Do you see a path forward to address this shortfall while still addressing these neighborhood concerns? And this question goes first to Arthur, followed by Dan, and then Richard. Arthur, hang on 1 second. Okay, Arthur, go ahead.
Great. It's only reasonable that people would retain the investment in their neighborhoods, both culturally and in terms of their properties and their families. Opposition isn't a bad thing. The key is trying to look at ways in which a healthy balance can be struck so that those that have entitlements on both sides can come to a respectable and, let's say, compromised solution without compromising the values. We have, with the 40B situation, a state process that must be followed. And that is in progress. It was cited in part earlier. And the communities have had an opportunity to have representatives speak to those projects in the first round. And I attended some of those, particularly the last meeting of the Board of Selectmen, of the Select Board at the Town Hall, and sat in on others virtually. I think if we're going to move ahead constructively, we have to take a look at alternatives to meet the 10% requirement, or to get as close to it as possible in such a way that it would preclude an incentive for Milton to have to be faced with additional 40B situations. There is property out toward the Truman Highway. It would take a 2/3 vote of the town meeting, a 2/3 vote of the state legislature to make that property available for affordable housing purposes. But it's an opportunity, and I think if the opportunity is there, it ought to be pursued and not talked about indefinitely, so that we move proactively toward a resolution which will get us beyond the just below 5% that we have currently at affordable housing, and doing that in concert with an understandable, a very clear communications plan for the community as a whole. We have to look both at the affected areas, and we have to look at the town as a whole, and having everybody come together and understand exactly what the strategic direction that the town is taking and what the benefits are, as well as the liabilities. Having that type of communication going forward, I think, is going to benefit all of the parties and be respected by all of the parties. So I place that on the table for consideration and hope it is of value.
Thank you, Arthur. The question now goes to Dan.
So I think the first part of that question was, we've vigilantly opposed, and the select board has been fighting and pushing back on this type of development. I think the first question, if I'm not mistaken, was as this process continues forward, because it's still early in the process, if the developments aren't changing or similar types of developments come, would I take the same approach? And the answer is absolutely. For all the reasons that we said earlier, there is no respect given to the communities or the town as a whole for the projects that are on Blue Hills Ave and Canton Ave. And you can even say that a little bit about what was proposed for East Milton neighborhood. They didn't take into context the surrounding area, and they didn't, respect what makes Milton so great. So I certainly would oppose that. In terms of what we can do going forward, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is we have a reputation out there. We have long been known as Milton has long been known as a community that's difficult to work in, across the board. It's hard to come in and get anything done, and it takes a while. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but when the perception lasts for such a long time, the good developers, the people that do really good projects that engage the community and are really good advocates and really good at building a coalition of a like-mindedness in terms of what a project should be, they're going to go to other towns. And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, Richard made a comment earlier. I know what he's talking about with that project over in Dedham. Good developers will go elsewhere because, at the end of the day, we have to remember they're a business too, and they're going to go where they can be successful. If we're making it more difficult for good developers to come in and do good projects, we need to fix that. And I think we're starting to take direct steps to do that. The affordable production plan, I think, is a good step. The planning board is working really hard on some of these things, the Milton Village overlay, and none of these things are going to be perfect, and it's not something that everybody's going to agree upon, but if it benefits the town as a whole and the collective, I think it's something we need to consider. And I think we have to remember, it's not a one size fits all. It's not, how can we get 1, 2, 10, 20 projects that are going to come in and solve this problem? It's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of unique projects to meet it. It's certainly going to be an uphill battle, but it's something that we need the right people working on and focusing on, both in short-term and long-term thought processes.
Thank you, Dan. Richard, not to be forgotten ever again. You're next.
Okay, so to begin with, I am elected and I sit on the board, and I'll give a little bit of a historical here. We're at Dan's correct in that as long as Milton remains under the 10%, we're always going to be a target for developers, even if they've never been in the 40B business before, the affordable housing business like Tamposi, to come in and just propose to build some monstrosity way beyond scope and size that the town could ever entertain. When I first came on the board, we had lost the case of 711 Randolph Avenue, where a lot of people have forgotten about that. This planning board member, Kathleen O'Donnell, called it the castle in the swamp. It's probably the worst project that ever could have been approved in this town. But part of the issue was we were below the 10%. I do want to give credit to my colleagues and all the residents that have come out in the Ice House project, the Canton Ave project, the Blue Hill Ave project, and multiple times on first the Falcone project and now the Cochran project. I think that we've been very careful in listening. Each project got at least 2 hearings where they could weigh in their comments. Just with regard to the Cochran Falcone projects in East Milton, clearly they were listening, because not only have they withdrawn, but they asked for every single written comment we as a select board received. That's an important thing. On the Falcone project, we brought in the Urban Land Institute. We looked at the entire square, what could work, what could not, to try and bring in the experts. Our board has hired Judy Barrett, an expert on affordable housing, to consult us on each one of these and the response to each one. And they're very public. They're out there. You can see them. And we worked very hard and very carefully to include the comments of each and every resident as they gave to us, whether it was schools, whether it was traffic, whether it was site, just the size of it, the massing, the negative ability, the negative impact on a possible negative impact on the neighborhood. Each of those things are critical. because as I said when I first started, the commonality amongst each of us is 0286. And the responsibility for anyone who wants to come to the leadership of this town, you have to listen, be patient, roll up your sleeves. And even if it's baby steps, as affordable housing is today and will continue to be probably for the next few years moving forward, you have to do that. We need to look at smaller projects. You know, we have an affordable housing plan with a 50 unit a year for the next 4 to 5 years. Find me 50 units today. Find me a proposal a developer who come in and propose just 40 units or 10 units. That's one of the things we need to do to educate people. And that's the way we're going to move forward on this. The current plans, many of them are just way too big and way out of scope. But I do think that our board is working very hard on this, and that's part of the reason that I'm running for re-election. Is I want to continue on this path so that we are able to address this issue going forward and able to do it without interrupting the quality of life that the residents of Milton currently enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm unmuted. Perfect. Next question. Only one part, I think. Yep, only one part. So the town of Milton is disproportionately affected by airplane pollution, traffic, and noise, primarily from the 2 concentrated flight paths over Milton, which comprise approximately 40% of the arrivals into Logan Airport. There is a disparate impact even within town, which leaves some of those not directly under the paths lacking in appreciation for the severity of the issue. At the same time, there's been a great deal of misinformation from rogue groups and individuals fed to Miltonians, which has caused further discord. As a leader, what will you do to bring the entire community, including those who are affected by the problem and those who are not, to work in unison together to advocate for change? And this question goes first to Dan, followed by Richard, and then Arthur.
So I think the first thing that needs to be done is we need to remember that we're a small portion of this flight, of all the flight paths, and we have to remember that we have neighboring communities that are also going to be affected by our decisions. So I don't think that we can sit here and think individually and say, we want to make it better for us and put the burden on other communities. It's just not fair. That's probably part of the reason why we got where we're at. But I think we really need to work with our state reps, and we really need to build a coalition of neighboring communities. One voice coming together is going to be what makes us successful. There are so many layers to this. You're dealing with Massport, you're dealing with the FAA. There's so many layers and levels to get through. It's not a quick, easy process. The federal government's involved. It's definitely going to take a long time. So I think that we need to really build a coalition amongst our neighbors and find what's equitable. We can't sit here and say they're going to be not impacted. We all have to remember that we also get the benefit of the airport being so close. I travel for work and I travel with my family, and the days that I need to get to the airport, I do enjoy it. And maybe I don't always remember that when I hear the planes going over, but we need to remember there's a balance with all of this. But there is a solution, I think, to make this better for Milton.
Thanks, Dan. Richard, you're next.
So my answer is going to be a little bit different. I don't sit on the airplane subcommittee, but I've learned a little about it. Actually, and like yourself, I live right in the neighborhood, so we're on the flight paths all the time. Or the non-flight paths. Now, I actually count in 3 hours. I counted only 2 planes on Sunday. But what are the lessons we should learn out of COVID? What are the positives? Everything. We've been a highly mobile society. Everyone wants to travel. Everyone wants to jump in a plane. Everyone wants to jump in a car and clog 93 north and south each day going into Boston. And suddenly that's all gone away. As a country and as a state and as localities, we put all our eggs in the mass transit basket, be it airfare, trains, or cars. Perhaps we should look at how much we can do from home, what we can achieve. We've been running, the continuity of government on all 3 levels has been working for almost 3 months. So the second aspect that I want to mention about that is the pollution aspect. Across this world, from China to San Francisco to Boston, we're seeing improvements in air quality. we're seeing improvements in noise quality. We need to take the lessons learned from COVID. And we owe this to the 5,000 residents of this Commonwealth who have died in the past 2 months and the hundreds of thousands that have died in this country from COVID-19. We need to use this to try and change it. As Dan said, and I learned very easy from meetings with Congressman Lynch, our state reps, the people who've worked on airplane noise in the past, as you know, Melissa, to our current MCAC rep, Tom Doherty, who's a brilliant attorney, to all my colleagues and lawyers who've worked on this. This is an uphill battle. But let's take a pause here and maybe we look at this differently. Maybe we look at this differently and take one benefit out of COVID-19 and use it towards airplane noise to the greater benefit of our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Arthur, you are next. Give me 1 second to unmute you. Why is it? Okay.
There we go. You know, this question brings back some memories. When I returned home to Milton 20 years ago, I was returning to Logan from a business assignment in Atlanta. And after putting my work into my travel case and looking out the starboard window, there was Belcher Circle right below me. In fact, I felt like I could reach out the window and touch the yellow stripe running down the center of the road. It was beautiful, but I said, how is this possible? Second recollection is being on our deck with our children and watching the traffic coming into Logan and teaching them which nations the planes represented by virtue of the designs on their tails. And it wasn't unusual to have 9 consecutive planes coming in. One day, if I remember correctly, in 90 minutes, we counted 14. That's extraordinarily heavy, not just in terms of noise, but in terms of pollutants that need to be measured and evaluated. This past summer, I sat with our 5-year-old grandson, our oldest grandchild, and did the same thing. What's the matter with that picture? It sounds trite, but it's very real. So I would think that with the changes that are taking place now, due to CV-19, there is an opportunity to possibly do something different, but it will take a coalition of all of the parties. And I salute the grassroots citizens who've been bringing this level of awareness to the community and to those people who have given of their professional and business time to engage in this issue as well. And if we could have a coalition that could design new approaches or alternative approaches to bring this to a favorable resolution, I think it would be welcomed by all parties.
Thank you. Okay, this is our final question, and it's only one part. Good news. So, and it's interesting right now because it's kind of not a factor in light of COVID-19, but hopefully when we get back to a slightly more normal existence, ironically, it will be a factor again. So here we go. Given our proximity to Boston and the commuter traffic volume through town, what do you think that can be done to alleviate traffic in Milton's neighborhoods and make it safer for our seniors and young families? And this question goes first to Richard, followed by Arthur, and then Dan.
Thanks, Melissa. As I said it in my previous answer, if you're going to be a leader, you need to be able to be visionary and look beyond just what's in front of you. COVID-19 is a public health crisis, but the associated things that have taken place from it, staying at home, distancing, all of that, gives leaders the ability to look at the benefits that come from it. Anyone who lives in, and I just say my own neighborhood in East Milton, or anywhere in this community now, 93 corridor, or anywhere actually in the Commonwealth, sees the dramatic change and the increase in tranquility that occurs each day from the lack of traffic. As I said, if we can ensure the continuity of government, of private business, of other entities of our world, that they keep functioning by working at home, then I think it's incumbent upon all of us as leaders. I've said to the town administrator, perhaps we need to look at town hall and how many people, because we've been able to run town hall through all of this with some people working from home and some people coming in, staggered work hours, days in, day, all these things that have worked to keep us afloat through COVID-19 could definitely be the answer to mass traffic congestion. We know, and we have to address this, because one thing that's not going to happen tomorrow, 100 people aren't getting on each train at North Quincy Station, and every bus going through East Milton is going to be packed. So to me, my goal with my colleagues and the rest of the people in this town and our state legal partners, state and regional partners, is to try and look at this moving forward, the benefit of COVID-19, and try and keep this congestion diminished the way it is now, so we don't just jump back to where we were. It's a lesson, a very important one, that we can all learn from, and I want to push that forward when I'm reelected to this board.
Thank you. Arthur, give me 1 second, make sure you're unmuted. Okay, go ahead.
We have the traffic mitigation study, and taking a look at the implementation of its components at this particular point in time would be very important for the community. The safety element is extremely high on my radar. From what I see living where I live, Richard and I share a neighborhood. The cut-through traffic is egregious. Governor's Road, Garden Street, the same. Other areas of our community, we're essentially, in many respects, a cut-through community. One would hope that it's ameliorated by the changes that are going to take place, the new normal, as it's called, as a result of CV-19. The degree to which that's going to take place is yet unknown. But I know in my business, there will be dramatic changes because we can work now in ways in which we never thought possible. Things that we thought would take 3 years to implement are now implemented at the present time. So that can have significant reductions on traffic loads. That doesn't mean we shouldn't plan, we should implement. We should maximize the tools that are available to us, whether they are software packages for ongoing studies, because there's always this tendency to do something and say, well, we studied it, it's done, when in reality, a study is only a part of a very important process. It should be ongoing, whether it's 3 years or 5 years, to fine tune, to make adjustments. We have to figure out ways in which our community can be much safer. I worry about the post-CV-19, just looking at the way in which some people have been driving. Yesterday, I saw 2 people in our town run through traffic lights at speeds that they would not have previously used, totally oblivious to the fact that they were going through red lights. So it's a new world, it's a new horizon, but it's also a new opportunity. And by maximizing things, I would take, for example, something like don't block the box. We've needed one at Wood Street for a long time. I can't get out to cross over, to go over to the other side of town, or to go out to 128, where our office is located, if I might be going back there. So in any event, let's use this time constructively and creatively. We've got
Thank
to
you, Arthur. Okay, I unmuted myself. Now it's Dan's turn.
So I think this is a great question because I think it goes straight to the point that some of us have been mentioning tonight, which is, we have to be thinking visionary and outside the box. I've been really fascinated reading about other communities taking this as an opportunity to close streets and making them pedestrian only, bicycle only, and things like that. I would love to see us be able to do things like that and try to take advantage of this and do some study programs like that and find out if there is a way to create pedestrian safe zones and think outside the box. Additionally, Richard touched on it earlier, which is, we're going to be working differently. I've already started seeing in my projects, there's a lot less travel that's going to happen. people realize that we can get more done remotely. And I think we need to start looking at, how can we set the town of Milton up to be in a better position? Something like a municipal broadband, invest in our infrastructure so that it's available, it's more affordable, it's something that we own, and it's, better internet than what we can get from RCN and Comcast. Something like that would be great. But it also might attract some businesses and bring in, businesses that would allow people in Milton to work and live here and cut down on the traffic. There's the old adage of developers always say, the work, live, play model, where if we can do everything in our community, it starts to cut down, and there's a real domino effect there. I think a lot of us go outside of town to get our goods or do different things. If we have those in town, then maybe it starts cutting down on traffic and becomes a domino effect. But also has the added benefit is we keep our money in town, and it helps again with those budget items that we were talking about earlier. So I think we can make Milton better, and I think we can use this as an opportunity to really hit the reset button and figure out what do we really want Milton to look like going forward.
Thank you so much, Dan. So believe it or not, I can't believe the time has flown, at least for me. Many thanks to the candidates for their thoughtful responses to the questions. And now each candidate will have 2 minutes to speak in closing. This will take place in alphabetical order, starting with Dan Clark, proceeding to Arthur Doyle, and then finishing with Richard Wells. So Dan, I'm going to mute myself. You are unmuted and ready to go.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This has been great. Thank you to Richard. Thank you for Arthur. I think it's great that we were able to do this. I think it's important that we did this. The voters have a really important decision to make. This is a position for 3 years. It's a position that is going to have long-lasting impacts on what Milton looks like in the future. So it's really hard, I think, for the community to be able to answer these questions and figure out who should be leading the select board without having something like this. So thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks for all the hard work from Mike in the background there. Quickly after moving to town, I really sensed the community pride and really the sense of strong civic duty across the board from other town meeting members, from neighbors. But I really found it when I got involved in the fire station building committee, working with the town, administrator, working with the select board, Richard Wells being our liaison, really understanding what his day-to-day is like, really lit a fire and a passion inside me that I have the energy, I have the abilities to make a positive impact now, and I want to do it now when I have that energy and I have the time and I have that fire. I think it can be a very difficult position and burden to carry. So I don't think it's a position that people would do for a long period of time. So that's really what motivated me. I feel like the fire station building committee is in a good position. I think we've done some really good, and I think it's a good time to transition to the select board so I can do more. So I really ask for you to consider giving me one of your 2 votes. Just a reminder, you can vote by mail. You can do it in person still, personal preference. And to learn more about me, go to votedanclark.com, and you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram. So thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Okay. Arthur, you are up.
This was an excellent evening. All of us together, I think, enjoyed it, and we owe you a debt of gratitude, as well as a debt of gratitude to the sponsors. The hope that I have is that this is only the beginning of other ways in which this can be engaged for the advantage of our community. Some of the issues that we'll put on the table tonight and discussed by all of us might be issues for an event like this in the future. And I hope that will be considered. When invited, I thought back on what I'd like to say in concluding, and maybe it's a little bit of a way of letting people know more about me as a candidate. My thoughts went to paying back and paying forward into the future. And that's the motivation. My parents came to the United States from Newfoundland well before it was part of Canada. My mother had settled in Cambridge in 1929. We would kid her about her sense of timing, but it was the right thing for her to have done. My father came from a different part of Newfoundland in 1935, a mid-Depression year in which only 55,000 people were allowed entry into the United States. He joined family members in Dorchester, and along with them was part of the Boston Fish Piers North Atlantic fishing industry. Our parents moved the young family to Milton, where we became not only a Milton family, but an American family. Influenced by Mr. Jacobson, who taught U.S. history at the then Mary A. Cunningham Junior High School, I pursued later studies in history in state and local government. Mr. Arthur Vos, of one of Milton's oldest families, was my Citizenship in the Community Boy Scout Merit Badge counselor. After the meeting, when the requirements were met, Mrs. Vos joined us with 3 glasses of milk and a heaping plate of cookies for an hour-long mentoring on Milton, its history, people, and service to the community, further cementing a direction to be taken later in life. The completion of Milton High School by our children, 3 generations of our family had experienced the quality benefits Milton has to offer, and the 4th generation was enrolled in a Milton preschool. Collaboration, planning, and timely decision-making are crucial from my perspective to sustaining Milton as a quality community for all its present citizens and for those who will follow us. Today and tomorrow will require vision, experience, and the realization of new opportunities essential to a first-rate community for our families and our neighbors alike. And so, in asking your consideration for one of your 2 votes for our select board in Milton's June 9 election, whether you vote early by mail beforehand or on that date at the polls, my family and I wish you and your family the very best of health and safety during this unprecedented time in our lives. Thank you.
Thanks, Arthur. Richard.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks for hosting this. Thanks to Rep. Driscoll, the Elliott family, the always talented and hardworking Michael Lynch and all of his staff at MPEG, to both Arthur and Dan for taking part in this tonight. One of the things you learn very early when you get into running for townwide office or any office is one of the hardest things to do is to ask someone to vote for you. It was a lot different than being a policeman for 3.5 decades. But as I said when I first started, this is about people. This is about the people who live here, the people who choose to make their home here. It's about the people who work here. It's about the kids who go to school here. You know, all you can bring to the table, regardless of what's in your resume, are the innate virtues of effort, compassion, patience, and understanding. That's what all the boards bring. That's what the committees bring. All the residents who give so much to make Milton so great. It doesn't matter whether it's COVID-19, affordable housing, public safety, education, airplane noise, any of it. The goal of being on this board is to listen and to try and work hard to make this community better. I think that's something my dad instilled in me. When I was a young kid, when you brought home your report card, he didn't care how the front of the report card looked. He only cared that you got an A in effort. It took me a long time to learn that well into adulthood. But I think anyone who knows me or anyone who's worked with me in all these years knows that I will listen, I will fight for what's right, and I'll fight for the community and the neighborhoods they live in. So this one last time, I ask the residents of Milton to vote for me, to keep me there to work on your behalf, on the issues that face you, the issues that challenge you, the issues that care about you. And the last thing I just want to say is this is a time in life not to be selfish. This is a time to be selfless. Many of you have been staying at home for months, and now you're safer at home, but as I see each day, you're venturing out. Do something to help others. Give blood. Make a donation to the Greater Boston Food Bank. Do something to help those who are really struggling right now. Because the greatest benefit I brought to this position is that when you're in policing, you see much of the bad. You see people in their darkest days in life. You put that in your heart and you keep it with you. And every day in every meeting, you go to a select board meeting, and every time someone emails you, calls you, or comes to you, you never forget that. And you use that skill and you use that ability to make the best decision for them, whether they like it or not, but the best decision for your community. So that I thank you all, and I hope you will vote for me on June 9th. God bless.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I am super grateful as a Milton resident to have 3 quality candidates running in this election. I know that this can be a very thankless job sometimes, and I know it requires a great deal of personal time and effort, and I really appreciate that you're all willing to do that. And I can't wait to run into all of you at Novara or the Plate or the Fruit Center, where we can be humans again. So with that, we will now close the debate. Thank you again to the candidates, to Milton Access TV for all of their help, especially since I asked them very late in the game to jump on board, and to the Elliott family as well as Representative Driscoll for sponsoring this event. Thank you to all the Milton neighbors for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful and safe evening.